One thing that is important is to get all of your breakers straight. So if you're not aware of different kinds of breakers, then this is the lesson for you. So just to run through them, these are all the most standard breakers that you see in most situations, most houses, most settings. These guys over here is a Homeline breaker. This one happens to be 50 amp, but it's a square D Homeline. So you see right there, it says type HOM, square D Homeline. This one happens to be a single pole 50 amp breaker. So this is a pretty hefty beast, but this is made by Square D and it is their Homeline brand. And so Square D breakers are great because they always have the nice Square D label on them. And they make another kind of breaker called a QO breaker, which is what this is. Now, the difference between the Homeline and the QO, one of the big differences is that the QO has a little window in it, so that if it trips, it shows red in that little window. But again, you got your Square D on the front, but this one is a very different kind of breaker. It's thinner than the Homeline. As you can see there, it's thinner, and there's no way you're going to get a Homeline to fit into a QO panel. They're not compatible in any way whatsoever. If you look at the Homeline, it's got this locking little foot here in the back. So when you stick it into a breaker, you put it in and it locks, and then you push the top down onto the blade, and then that bit there slots over the bus bar for it to have power. The QO breaker is different. This is a piggyback QO breaker. It's a piggyback because it's not a two-pole. It's got two single 20 amp breakers built into one. So that's called a piggyback. A two-pole breaker is like that. That is a Homeline, Square D Homeline two-pole breaker. So it looks like this one, as you can see, but it's 120, 120. So the 120, 120 make 240 volts. So this is basically two breakers tied together with the same switch. That's what makes it a two-pole. This goes on a single bus location, just like that one would, but this one in a QO breaker. But they compact everything in a single pole breaker. They double it for a piggyback breaker. So this is a different kind of breaker. It's a piggyback breaker with two 20 amp circuits coming out of it. Now, I always try to remember QO by the way that it snaps into the panel. So in this case, the Homeline, it kind of locks in and pivots forward. This one, it's got a different setup where this back piece here snaps onto a bar, and then the front snaps onto the bus bar. So there's no way you're going to get that one to fit in this breaker. You can't get a Homeline breaker to fit in a QO panel. You're never going to get a QO breaker to fit in a Homeline panel. So if you're going to go to a job and you're going to swap out a breaker, you better make sure that you know which panel you're dealing with. But I always remember QO because a Q and an O are both circles. And I always think of the bottom of that, you know, like a Q and an O. I mean, and that's kind of silly, but that's just how I always remember QO breakers. Other than they're a lot thinner and just a different kind of breaker altogether. But anyway, that was how I remembered when I was a young apprentice. But this particular breaker is a QO breaker, but it's a bolt-on. So see there, it's got that screw. So you'll find these in heavy-duty industrial panels where the bottom still snaps on, but then the front, this screws directly to the bus bar. So the electricity is flowing through this screwed on portion here on the front of the breaker. So when you undo these, the breakers sit much wider apart in the panel, and you've got to get a screwdriver all the way back there to hit that screw to unscrew it. And now you've got this electrified or energized screwdriver coming out. So what you want to do is try to get yourself some of those screwdrivers that have insulation all the way up the shaft, or get a screwdriver and just tape up the shaft of the screwdriver so that you're not dealing with a totally energized screwdriver as you're taking these guys out. And you also want to be careful you don't totally unscrew it and have that screw fall down into the panel. So that's a little scary as well when something like that happens. This is an Eaton breaker. This is their BR series. These guys are about as common as the Square D, and they're very, very similar. And in some cases, they're even interchangeable. I've been in lots of panels where I have found that they're basically interchangeable. So on these guys here, you can see that the only difference is right here in the back. The BR breaker this is the BR breaker. It does not have quite the same opening onto the bus bar as the Square D breaker does. So what that means is when you try to put this BR series Eaton breaker into a Square D panel, it's just not going to fit. So they do that on purpose, so they're not completely interchanged, although I have been in lots of panels where they have been interchanged because of a different older design or something like that. But ideally, you do not want to put you don't want to mix and match them in the panels. The panels tell you they're rated for the breaker that the company that designs the panel designs the breakers. So as best as possible, if it's a Square D panel, use a Square D breaker. If it's an Eaton panel, use an Eaton breaker. If it's a Cutler-Hammer panel, use a Cutler-Hammer breaker. And that's what this is. This is a brown handle, tan handle Cutler-Hammer. So it's a little bit like a QO, but it's just a different kind of breaker. And so these things also come, that's a single pull 20. There's another piggyback in that style there. Then you've also got your arc fault breakers. So this is an Eaton arc fault breaker. These guys have, actually this is a GFCI breaker. It's not technically an arc fault breaker. So this is the kind of breaker you would use for, say, a dishwasher or an outdoor circuit or something like that. But it looks a lot like an arc fault breaker. An arc fault also has the pigtail, or with the new panels, it's all built in. So it looks just like one of these, but the bus bar and it's connects. It's got a separate neutral bus line that goes down it that attaches to the breaker for the neutral run. So GFI breakers and arc fault breakers have to have. They want to read the neutral as well. That way they can trip from neutral to ground instead of just from hot to neutral. So it's a whole other layer of protection you're going to get out of a GFI breaker or an arc fault breaker. They just do more. They're also way more expensive. These guys over here, $8. These guys over here, $50. So there's a big difference between the two. And then you get some odd sort of breakers like this one. This is a 2-pull 20-20-30-30 piggyback breaker. So you can put this into a panel and it's going to take up the space of a oh, this one happens to be oh, look at that. This one got burnt up. So I'm throwing this guy away. That shouldn't even been on the shelf. It got totally burnt up. But notice it's got two locations for hooking onto the bus. So it's a 240 volt, but when you flip it around this way, you discover it's a single 20, it's a 2-pull 30, and then it's another single 20. So this would be really nifty if you wanted to use this for, say, a laundry circuit where you've got your dryer, your washing machine, and then your standard countertop laundry circuit. So the code book tells us that a laundry has to have its own circuit. And in this case, you can have your countertop circuit, you can have your dryer, and you can have your washing machine all in one breaker. And then it'll do the job just great. And so it shares, these are sharing space in the midst of like basically two breakers, but now you got four. So you see how that really gives you a lot more options. But this one here has been burnt up. So it is getting chucked away. All right, so there's your invitation and your exploration of a variety of different breakers. We've got loads on our shelf here in the shop, all stacked up. So we often come through here and rummage through stuff and try to find what we want. Back during COVID, there was a breakers shortage. So these breakers suddenly got really important that we had here in the shop. But anyway, make it a point to go to the supply house and ask permission to go to the back and look at all the breakers, or you go to Lowe's, do the same thing, look at all the breakers and get a feel for all the different styles, kinds, that are available. And then when you're looking at panels, make sure that you are taking note of the kind of panel and what that panel is branded, so that you get the right breakers out of it.